Are you just about to do some of your weekly plant chores? I am. How about you join me and you can see what I do on my Sunday plant care? Hi, my name is Memo, this is my channel, Houseplantygoodness, and essentially it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion. You might be able to see some of it behind me, it's tropical houseplants. So much requested video this one, and I think I've been able to do it. I've got two cameras. Well, I've got my usual camera and I've got my phone down lower looking at the kind of watering area, and hopefully I'll be able to do some fancy editing. Future Memo, who's going to be editing this, I am sorry in advance, because I'm going to hate me when I have to do that. But I thought, since a lot of people have always requested this, like kind of what do I do on an average kind of heavier plant care day? Ironically enough, today isn't that heavy. It is a Sunday though, so it is a day that I do quite a bit of my watering, and hopefully I've even got the newfangled tech working for me to be able to move around in the space. With this video, I'm assuming people are either going to put this in the background or watch me do the plant chores. Up to you, basically, what you want to do. But without further ado, let's dive into it. So I've got a handy dandy iPad, and normally I would do the list from my phone, from my plant care app. I've done a whole video on it. I'll link it at the top there. But I had to get ingenious with how I was going to do this. There is a way that I can port this over to an iPad as well. It's just, I'm also going to do it just for this video. So very long a screenshot, and yeah, let's just go with it basically. And the first plant that I need to deal with, I'm probably going to do right at the very end basically, which is, and I'll show you, it's the fact that I need to repot and basically readjust my moss pole for my El Choco Red. And I pulled it out of the shelf so you might be able to see. My El Choco Red is doing really well at the moment. However, the thing that is happening, and I'll take off the crispy leaf now because this is what Sundays are for, you might be able to see, if I kind of bring it in and hide my face, the growing tip is going completely away from the moss pole. So the repot today with this one is going to be me taking this out of its soil media, possibly reusing the same one because I only just recently repotted it into this, and moving the moss pole so it's up actually against the growing tip, and hopefully it will adjust. The reason why I'd done it the way that I had is when I was chopping and propping this plant, there was two growth points. One that came out this way, and one, hopefully you might be able to see, one that was going up against the moss pole. And at that point, I thought the one that was up against the moss pole was the one that was going to activate. So I'm just like, hey, let's do that. Did the plant do what I wanted it to do? No. So this is why we're doing it again. But yes, as I said, this is going to be one that I'm going to place down and deal with a bit later, basically. Okay, so one of the first plants I want to grab is my Alocasia brancifolia. So I had to move to the handy dandy remote because the automatic movement was just getting a bit too jarring. So yes, first plant I want to deal with is my Alocasia brancifolia. And it's doing okay, actually. This was a plant that was really struggling in semihydro. And I know I've got a couple of comments about, you know what, you probably need to transition it a bit better rather than just going from semihydro straight back into soil. Semihydro straight back into soil. All I was getting was one of these last month, basically. So it's done well. Usually the things that I do have worked in my conditions with my care. I don't ever advise that you do exactly what I do, but it has worked for me, and sometimes the rules are meant to be broken, basically. So it's doing really well. It's got a new growth point coming out. This plant, I will say, has been a pain this kind of summertime, basically, because, and you should be able to see me down below, basically, in terms of how I do my watering, it tends to get an awful lot of pests, basically, as in predominantly mealybugs, which is a pain because the leaves are so delicate and fine and fern-like that it just doesn't make caring for this very easy, because usually what I have to do, which is what I'm quickly doing now, is just make sure that there's no mealybugs that are happening there. I think it may have dealt with them well, basically. This might need a bigger pot soon because the roots are getting a bit root boundy in here, basically, but that's a problem for another time, basically. I might put that. And this is how I do my plant care, basically. Remember what I was talking about with my app and the other video that I kind of hopefully linked earlier on in the video? What I will do on Sundays like this, if I had my phone and I wasn't filming, I would actually deal with this and then put a one-off task that would be this needs repotting at the next watering, basically. And that's how I would normally do it. So just to put this back and bringing you along with me, this lives kind of in the shelf here and kind of behind, and there's a little ledge that is happening there. You're probably going to get all of the awkward angles today, but it's probably the easiest way that I can do this, really. So let's have a look at the next plant. Interestingly, with this one is, and it's still in my app as Anthurium veitchii plug. Let me show you the plug plant now. You might be able to see it behind me. So that's one of its leaves. I don't know whether or not the other one's going to come up. I think, ooh, maybe I can tilt. I forgot that I can tilt with this camera. Oh, look at that. That's his newest leaf, basically. So this is most definitely no longer a plug plant, basically. So, but Sundays are the best days for me to water it. It is in semihydro. And normally what I would do, let me show you what I'll do actually. I would normally take, I know it sounds dumb and some people might do this, tell me if you do the same thing. I'll have a big watering can and then fill up the small watering can because it gives them a bit more flexibility. So I will just go in and fill it in. At this point, this plant has been in this semihydro for a while. And ooh, whilst I try not to like douse everything, but welcome to the realities of my watering. Basically, everything goes everywhere. And now you might be noticing the turkey baster is because it's got a reservoir at the bottom, and I just want to make sure that it's not going to spill and just literally flood everything underneath it. But I think it might be fine. And it is this time of the year where it's been so hot. And apparently we're going to have hotter days this week. And by so hot, let me just put this into context from people from actually warm countries. It's been like 22 to 24 degrees Celsius. And this week they're saying it's going to be between 26 and 29. Oh, it's for the people that live in the UK, that means we all know it's going to get a bit disgusting. But that's fine. It doesn't seem to be kind of dripping anywhere, so I'll call that good for now. And bringing you along. So let's see what we need to do. What's the next plant? See what I mean? This, like, my plant care isn't that exciting. I don't think this is very different from what other people might be doing, basically. Now, the other thing that is on the list, and I keep moving this as a one-off task, is the fact that I've got my Vitarifolium, and let me bring you a bit further down and show you the Vitarifolium here, basically. The reason why I'm hesitating to do my next task, because you might be able to see here the newest leaf, this is still growing and still hardening off. And I've had a few leaves that the younger leaves that came in more recently stayed thin and they didn't get particularly long, but this one is showing a lot of potential again. So I don't want to mess with its roots just now until that has hardened off. So what I might do again this week is move it back basically by another week and then see about repotting it then. Also, you might be able to see if I tilt you up a bit more, hopefully you can see that is the very cool Traversia plant, the one that looks a bit like a snowflake. It's doing really well. That has been super thirsty in my space now that the time is, like, the weather is getting a bit warmer basically. So that, to give you an indication, is getting watered every like 4 days basically. Doesn't everybody love the summer? I do. I know I do. Right, you keep seeing me fiddle with my pockets. It's just because it's easier for me to just put the remote in there. So that will stay as it is. The next one is the Capuli spathum. And I don't know whether or not this is going to show up if I bring you along with me, but let's try. I don't know how much this is going to be able to do. So you can see that's what I mean. The shelves are here, so they're kind of in the way. But let me pull it out and bring it, and we can kind of look at it together, shall we? Okay, and you can see the Capulus spathum, and you can see what I mean. These leaves, when they get absolutely huge, because I saw them on the Ecuagenera website. This was an Ecuagenera purchase, by the way. They get absolutely ginormous. And I think they were kind of saying in a live or one of their reels that they're just like, don't be sleeping on this plant. And I am so glad that I bought this. You're also seeing me take off some of these Predator kind of satchels. They've been on there. They're kind of done basically now. I've replaced some of them. I need to, you know, when you kind of order these things and I'm just like, 50 should be fine. I need to order another 50. But yes, so this is still in semihydro. This is also getting a water reservoir. I'll show you the roots, and hopefully without kind of like dropping everything else from underneath it, you might be able to see those tiny roots coming through. But this is a plant that was truly, truly struggling. This gets relatively bright light, basically, so I'm just going to dump that down there. And normally what I would do, so other camera, normally I would go with my small water. However, because of this, I want to flush. So I've got the big watering can here, and I will just make sure that everything is flushed so that entire kind of semi-hydro mix is saturated. I will kind of let this drip down. And then I will put it back into its space and fill its water reservoir that it sits in, which essentially is just a plastic like drip tray basically. Drip trays are my saviors during this time of the year because I cannot cope. And yes, I've got my iced coffee because Sunday morning without coffee is just, it's not a thing. The next one is cool. So the next one is the flavolineatum. Let me bring it up again because it's at a point where I can't take you with me. So again, for the people that have been here for a while and you know that I've struggled a bit with this, which didn't seem like it was going to struggle. So you can kind of see it's very sensitive to light. So I think it needs relatively like dark conditions. And I'm trying to see the roots. I can still see the roots and they seem healthy. None of this is rot basically. So I don't understand why this plant isn't getting happy basically. I did do some research with this plant. Oh no, I do have a new little growth point. Cool. So that's what I always say. Take away the cataphyls, the dry and crispy cataphyls, and you might be surprised with what you find. Is there any rot in there? No, that should be fine. Cool. So what I've been doing with this plant is I've been letting it dry out a bit more and kind of waiting for it to kind of go a bit more dry because I'm a bit worried there wasn't that many roots in there. And you should be able to see on the other camera what I'm doing there. I'm reusing the water. I am aware that I might also be kind of passing pests around. But at this point in my life, I've done this for how many years? This might be why I have as many mealybugs as I do, but like, the realities of this, and I'm going to be very blunt, the realities of a space like this is the bugs are going to get everywhere anyway. Am I possibly speeding it up? Maybe, but to be fair, not that much. Because everything is touching everything. It's a warm, humid environment. The plants love it. The pests love it as much as they do. So it is what it is, but it does work. And otherwise, I would be wasting a whole bunch of water. And I am not about that life, basically. But you can kind of see I've done that because this is in an Anthurium soil mix, and the other camera can see why I get this flashback entirely when I do these things. Is because it's in a soil mix, this doesn't stay wet for as long, but to be fair, it's doing okay. It's just, I wanted to give it more of a chance that with these really, really warm days, and if it's getting a bit stressed, to be able to survive it a bit better. I don't think there is rot. Is there any? No. I mean, the stem is still quite strong. I can't see any rot within the actual plant itself. That is the newest leaf. That is the oldest leaf. It's a shame because this was doing so well and I maybe should have just left it in moss for another 3 to 4 months basically and then moved it. But this was getting way too much light. So where I've got it now is very low on a plant shelf with a grow light doesn't get that much of the usual sunlight that the whole space would get, just because I want to be able to control this a bit more. But sorry, what I started to say when I was doing some research on this, I think this is an Anthurium, not necessarily from higher elevation, but this is an Anthurium that doesn't like particularly warm temperatures, which means this is going to look like death in the summer, but it might pick up again in the winter. And I will restate what I said on a previous video. If that one goes, I am so getting another one, basically. Right. Let's have a look at what's next. So Cupulis bathum is done, Flavolineatum is done. Ooh, Metallicum. Let's do the Metallicum. This is my life, me like moving water between like different containers, basically. Okay, and this is my Metallicum, which I gave it a reservoir for the first time last week because it was getting a bit too hot. More of those satchels that need to go. This one recently has started showing me mealybug issues. And are they still there? Potentially. So try sometimes with your Anthuriums to take off the kind of the crispy brown cataphyls, because I find if you've ever got anything like mealybugs or anything that likes to hide away, that is usually where they will go and live their best lives. So if you can kind of avoid giving them more kind of hidey hole places, so much the better. I know it's not an option for everybody, and if you've got a large collection like I do, it's not always the case. I've got my hair in here as well, I don't know how that happened. But I think it's okay. Oh no, there was a mealybug that was hiding right there. Right, let's do the tricky trick. I'm so glad that people liked the kind of trick that I showed you with the little water bottle pen like brush thing, basically. So still doing quite that. I was running low on like alcohol. Normally I would spray this as well, but at this particular moment in time there was enough, and there was only that one little tiny kind of pest there. But yeah, this one is doing well. Let's check the leaves. Let's check the leaves, because they've got like it's got some nooks and crannies, but no, it's doing all right. Anybody who's curious about kind of white marks on their leaves, I shared this on my Instagram. If you're not following me already on Instagram, please do. I do share some interesting tidbits on there as well. Why is this like struggling so much? Is it snapped? Oh, it has snapped. The heat is not its friend. To be fair, this has lasted a year, so it's all right. I've got another pen that I can just nick the bottom bit from, basically. But yes, with... Ooh, I lost my stream of consciousness. Shocking, I know. But yeah, with this, I'll just make sure that I'm checking the leaves and the roots, especially because I've only just given it a water reservoir. This should be all right. But yeah, this one is doing relatively okay. It kind of got moved location recently, and it threw a bit of a wobbly hissy fit. But it seems to be bouncing back, and normally you can just see what I just did there. As it was dripping, I just put it back into its container, so whatever the remainder was of that water, it will just drip through. Now, the one thing that I haven't talked about, which you maybe notice me do, is at the moment I'm watering all of my plants. I'm pretty sure it's everything. Oh no, actually the Brancifolia. Oh, that was dumb on my part. I try to water all my semi-hydro plants. I'm going through the list now. Normally I pick and choose and tick off as I go, basically. But normally I would choose all of my semi-hydro plants, water all of them first so there's no soil particles in that water that I'm reusing. And then when I'm done with all my semi-hydro plants, I'll move into watering my soil plants, if that makes sense. I've messed up a bit with that one, and I'm just going to wing it this time around. It should be fine. All right, the next one I did earlier on in the morning. There are certain plants that have been struggling for a while, so I try to water them first thing in the morning, which in my case this morning was 5:30 a.m. Love Duke in the summer when the sun comes out and it's just like, time to get up, is it? Let's get up. Let's just get up. Just like, can we not? But, so my Anthurium pedatum, the one with the kind of palm-like situation of leaves, hasn't given me a new leaf in a while now. It didn't particularly like the winter. I think I was letting it dry out too much. I didn't want to give it a reservoir in the winter. But it's bouncing back quite nicely at the moment, and that one was struggling a bit, so I'm just like, that needs watering before it gets too hot in here. Same thing goes with my Tiversium, the snowflake plant. So those two have already been done. So next one, Anthurium pendants. So this is my Anthurium pendants, and it's okay. I have said things about this, and I still stand by them. Like, I don't know if it's the plant that I've got. Ooh, that's annoying, I missed it. There's a new leaf that is currently got spider mites, I think. Nah. But this grows really horribly, and maybe it's just me, maybe it's because I've got it in semihydro. Should I maybe move this into soil? Possibly. Debating whether or not we just do it now together. Maybe? I'm really reluctant with pendant type Anthuriums to move them into soil because I found my Vitarifolium 100% prefers to be in semihydro rather than within soil mix, because that one tends to want to dry out a bit more. I don't know, so I've always kind of been tempted to not do that with my other plants, which are Anthuriums. You know what? Let's do it. Let's embrace the crazy, shall we? Actually, first thing has to be done. First, let's deal with those pests on that leaf. Now, normally I wouldn't do this for spider mites because I know alcohol doesn't do very much to them, but this is a new Anthurium leaf that really hasn't hardened off, and if I put anything like neem oil on it, it's just going to kill off the leaf, and this plant grows like rubbish in terms of how slowly it grows, so I don't want to risk that basically. So what I'm going to do now is, if nothing else, the alcohol might not be doing anything, but I'm hoping, and I generally find with alcohol that if it's a brand new Anthurium leaf, by and large, in my experience, all of the caveats, it tends to do okay if I just put like plain rubbing alcohol on it. It doesn't really harm the leaf too much, but if I try to put any other form of pest control on it, it hates life. And it's interesting because this plant, I'm just kind of looking at it going, no, there is literally no spider mites anywhere else on it. Anybody else find that with your Anthuriums? Like, if you're gonna get spider mites, you'll get them on the new leaf only, and the rest of the more mature leaves, which tend to be a bit more leathery, they just don't bother worrying about, basically. So that's what I'm finding with this one and all my others. Second litter tray, which is, I was hoping it was going to be slightly drier so I can kind of do the repot, but I'll be fine. Okay, and just because I know what I'm like, and I'm going to have to then deal with the pond, let's just empty it out in a different container, which you might be able to see from the other camera. I mean, the roots are okay on this. The roots are really, really fine on this. I'm just going to reuse the same pot. But there you go. You can see what I mean. The roots are completely healthy looking. There is maybe a tiny bit of rot somewhere, but other than that, it seems to be a-okay. I'll just quickly take off the rot. But yeah, this plant is fine. Absolutely fine in terms of its roots, which is good to see because I gave it a bit of a water reservoir. So this is what I meant by slightly thicker roots. This is semi-demi roots, so I think for now it might appreciate being in a slightly larger kind of soil media. Let me see if I've got a slightly taller, do I need? I don't know if anybody else does this. It's just like, do I need a bigger pot, or is this going to be okay with soil? It might. I want to give it some room to grow. Let me have a look. Yeah, I think I might move it up a pot size basically, just so I can kind of see what's going to happen with this. And I'm not going to fill it up entirely. I don't know if you all do this, but you know when you partially fill a pot, so instead of me kind of putting it all the way at the top there, I might put it in a bit lower. Actually, it could just be at the top. It's actually not that much. What it was in before wasn't that much of a difference in size. Possibly, yeah. So let me just add some soil in. I'm also fully aware of the irony that I said before. I don't want to repot a plant, especially an Anthurium, when it's got a new leaf with a Viterifolium, and I'm doing it with this one, but I'm less fussed with this one. My Viterifolium, as a lot of you know, and probably love as much as I do by this point on this channel, everybody's very fond of my Viterifolium. I tend to baby it a bit more just because I've got such love for that plant. This one I am less fussed about. Like, it's one of the things everybody always keeps going on. It's just like, you can't have favorites here. Watch me have favorites. But I will caveat it quickly and say, when I say I've got favorites, those change possibly every week. It's fine. It depends on which plant is annoying me that week and which plant is actually giving me some joy, basically. Right. Reuse that for later. Right, we're back on the watering train. I don't think that's new. No. So this is just going to get watered normally now. And normally, I know a lot of people like my spiral pots, and I will put a link to North's shop, basically, because it's North, one of the long-time subscribers and commenters on my videos. It's their business, basically. So if you like them, I think they're based in Canada, if I'm not mistaken, go and support. But in the beginning, what I'll tend to do, especially if a move like this has happened and I've gone to a slightly bigger kind of pot with a bit more soil or something like that, because this pot is one of my usual pots that I've kind of burned holes into. I won't give this a cash pot just yet. I might need to because it's getting very warm at the moment. But for now, this should be enough kind of aeration to go through it. And when it really starts kind of rooting in quite heavily, then I'll give it maybe a cash pot to help retain some of that moisture. This is the problem with this now. I need a bigger drip tray to put underneath it. So give me a sec. Okay, so moving on to some more of the plant watering, or care essentially. So that was appendants. Oh God, we're still going. We're still going. We're on plant. My list is slightly like numbered wrong because obviously you would have seen less plants by this point. But I'm on plant 11 of 28. And I've already probably watered, like a lot of my orchids and stuff like that, I probably watered already about 25 to 30 plants before I even started filming this. So I'm also kind of looking at my battery life on my camera, which we should be good. Okay, so next one is, and there's a couple of here that I need to do upstairs, so I won't drag you along with me for those ones. But yes, Anthurium aquamarans. And I will try to bring it out so you can see it's a pain because the newest leaf is growing through it. Hopefully, let me see if I can move you. Hopefully I might be able to just tilt you around. Right, so, ugh, my newest Queen Anthurium leaf is giving me all of the joys. Oh no! Uff, 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 uff. I'm less fussed when it's fully hardened off, so I'm less fussed, but that was a mealy bug. So chroma lens is always looking a bit janky because it just doesn't, it rips so easily when it's young, so I don't want to handle it too much. But that is its newest leaf there. I'm really hoping this is coming up on camera. But I don't want to bring it out because it's just too difficult to bring out at this particular moment in time. Let's have a look. With this one, it will just be a case of I water it from above and it's got a cash po underneath and it lives its best life, basically. So there we go. By far one of my thirstiest Anthuriums, by far. And if I don't deal with it having a cash po or kind of a drip tray at this time of the year, I will usually have issues with its newest leaf. So I try to keep it super hydrated. Right, so that was that one done. Oh, the next one I can show you it is, and I'll show you where it is as well. I keep putting the remote back in just so I can shift you with. This is the, why am I blocking again? Not Warwickwianum, Waterburyanum. Look at that, that's the newest leaf. There's some of the oldest leaves. It's in semihydro. It is a loving life. I've also given this a water reservoir and it's become so much happier since then. And as I was mentioning earlier on, I've got small watering can, medium watering can, massive watering can. I don't usually always do this, but at this point in time, my big watering can, which was 5 litres, was not lasting me on the big watering days, and the big watering can is now 10 litres. So, and let me see if there's gallons on this. Oh no, there isn't, but I think the 5 one saves me having to do the, okay. So this is technically 5 litres is 1 gallon, so 10 litres I would imagine is 2 gallons. The 5 gallon was not doing me any justice, basically. But what I would do, as I said before with the semihydro ones, I use the bigger watering can to make sure that it is fully saturated. I want to see the flooding happening. And I let it kind of drip, 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 drip for a bit. And then I'm still going to give it a water reservoir. Like, theoretically, people will be like, well, why are you letting it drip then? I'm just like, because I don't want to drip water over everything as I move it across. But I'll bring you with me. And I'll just pop it back into its place. You can kind of see, like, it's amongst other things, which means it doesn't get an awful lot of light, but it seems to be super, super happy. And I like things that shade other things, if that makes sense, because then it helps me deal with the level of sunlight. And actually, I am pleasantly surprised because I started the day today and it was super, super sunny, which is great. We're finally getting a bit of a summer in the UK. But I'm just like, oh, I'm going to go into that conservatory and it's going to be baking. But it's manageable for now. It's 28 degrees in here currently. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. But let's see what's next. Ooh. Right. Let's do the movement around. Okay. So with this one, and I will bring you along so you can kind of see where it is. Hopefully you might be able to see through there. Maybe, I can't see. But that is my Melanobolata. I might be able to bring it up actually. Why not? You haven't seen this for a while, and this one is the one that struggled. It is movable now. So, right, let me bring you along so you can kind of see. That is my Begonia Melanobolata. Very, very, very cool plant. And let me just show you the newest leaves when they come in. They look like little aliens. Can you see that right there? Oh my God. But yeah, lost a lot of its leaves. It had a bit of rot this winter, and I know that would have freaked some people out, but I'm just sitting there going, you know what? I love this plant. I'm going to try and rehab it and bring it back to life. I think I'm doing okay. And actually, you know what? I don't know, but this is giving me bonsai vibes. So yes, I mean, for a lot of people, because it's got a growth here and there's other growth in here, and I might do this actually, is potentially cut this and try to propagate the stem at different stages, and then I've got multiples. But actually, you know what? This gives me a bit of like a stylized hope, essentially. So let me just water this. This, along with a lot of my other rhizomatous begonias, which I find hysterical, does not, really does not, especially in the winter, like its leaves being wet. So I try as much as possible not to do that. So I'll water this there. And this is one also that this pot was very dry, like almost cactus level dry. I find that this is a begonia that if I keep it too wet for too long, it hates life. And granted, it is in here, so I don't know how it would be in a household condition, but it's doing really good. It's doing really good. And I'm super happy that this is kind of getting back to where it used to be. Let me put it back. But you saw where it was, is amongst a lot of the big leaves. And it seems to be loving life and exactly where it is. So let me move remotes away and into pockets so that they don't get wet. Let's continue. You can see why I haven't ever done this video before. I don't know if this is kind of interesting for anybody, but as I said, hopefully you've just got this in the background whilst you're doing your chores, and it's as if we're both in each other's places whilst we're doing plant chores. Hopefully that makes sense. I don't know if I'm making any sense today. Okay, the next one, interestingly enough, is a Calathea. And the Calathea is right down here. All right, let me bring it up. I mentioned this in one of my recent videos. This is the Calathea Yellow Fusion. And in all fairness, I always like to check its roots and see that it's okay, it's fine. Is it dry-ish? But this time of the year, I like to give my Calatheas enough water. I mean, it's dry enough, but you might be able to see, if I bring it in a bit closer, quite how many of those stems are old and dry and crispy, and I probably should deal with some of these. Let's do it now, shall we? Because I don't know if anybody else is like me, but if I don't do that at this particular moment in time, I'll just forget and it never happens. So I'm just like, do it, you've just seen it, do it, because if you don't do it, you'll keep looking at it 3 weeks later and you're still going to need to do it. So let's just get rid of some of these crispy old stems whilst trying not to cut off any of the new growth. But even if I do, that is fine. This plant will bounce back. That's better, I guess. Yeah, that's better. Yeah, it's doing okay. This one's getting blown out a lot, so I had to move it closer to where a grow light was. But I'm just like, this one has got very cool. I don't always see Calatheas with purple backs rather than kind of reddy backs, but this one's got very cool purple backs. And it seems to be a lot happier now that I've put it near a grow light. It's kind of really off to the side of a grow light. So if the grow light is here, like a really strong grow light, this is off to the side. And it's doing a bit better just because where it was right behind the camera, and I've got kind of almost like a south-facing window there. So this was getting crisped up to no end. But yeah, this one is doing quite nicely. And I mentioned this with my white fusion-y type Calathea. I think these really do not like winter. They really do not like winter, at least in my space. They tend to look like they're about ready to die. They don't die, but they look like they're about ready to die. So it's always a good idea, I find, with these to just wait until the summer and you might get some new growth. And you've got the usual cigar-like growth points that are happening from this Calathea, and it's doing all right. It's doing really, really well. Right, let's have a look. Okay, so the next one is my Monstera type constellation. It's upstairs, I don't have it here. Hopefully I'll maybe get a picture or a video or something about it here if I can. But it's got its newest leaf. Oh, there's so much cream from what I can see, which could also be a problem. But since I moved it into my office and it doesn't get an awful lot of light until like the summertime now and it kind of blares through, I tend to not get really any growth on it in the winter at all. And I know Monstera type constellations tend to be a bit slow for a lot of people. I don't tend to get a lot of growth for it almost at all over the winter, so it's really exciting when it reactivates in the kind of summertime. Oh. So yes, I've got another one of those, or I've got that kind of coming in at the moment. So Florida Ghost, this is an interesting one. So the big Florida Ghost that was here is no longer there. However, I do have its progeny. And when I say this is a feral plant, the fact that I've even got it on a watering schedule at the moment is insane, because this used to just get watered whenever I could remember to do it. So up here, this is my, let me see if I can move you up so you can kind of, I'll tilt you up so you can kind of see. So up here, that is my Florida Ghost, and it is behind a whole bunch of foliage, but it is in semihydro. Whilst I drip everything down, and there's a Monstera, not Monstera, there's a melanochrysum leaf that has obviously got caught. It's growing like mad, and with the melanochrysum at the moment, I'm trying to get it so that it does, what's it called? Air layering, so I can chop it up the bit behind, which is going feral, and move it. But let's have a look. I'm less fussed about ripping this leaf, but I'm going to try and get it out without it ripping. No, didn't achieve that. You know when you hear the crack, and I'm just like, oh well. I also saw a whole bunch of mealybugs on there that need to come off. There we go. At this point, when I've got this many mealybugs in my space, I just squish them in my hands. But that is now watered, but this never used to be on a schedule. But like whenever I could remember to water it, I would water it. Its parent, however, was on a schedule. So since the parent has gone, I have since kind of made it so that I remember to water that on the same schedule as the parent used to be. But before then, it was just feral, basically. Talking about the air layering of the melanochrysum. Again, all of the glamorous shots for you today because I need to dive in behind here, but right behind there I've got essentially damp sphagnum moss wrapped in some cling film, and I have to re-dampen it every 2 or 3 days. And today is a re-dampening day, so it can root out a bit more. I need that to be kind of relatively well rooted before I chop it off, because it's got a lot of very, very large leaves. And it's doing stuff, but it's not quite where I need it to be. Right, let's move the cling film back over it. Okay, yeah, the melanochrysum leaf is almost as long as this, if not longer, so I do want to maybe kind of chop and prop it and get rid of the original plant a bit, because it is kind of looking busted, and it will kind of sit where it is again, but it will have more of a somewhere to climb. At that point I might even give it a bit of a moss pole. I know, me, a moss pole for a plant, and I said it casually as well. I said it casually. Ugh. Shall we start? The deep sigh there. Should we do the acrobatics now? Let's do the acrobatics now. And let me tilt you up so you can see what I mean by acrobatics. So, up there is my UPI, philodendron UPI. And I need to climb on chairs and like watering cans. You'll see what I mean in a minute. Big watering can and turkey baster is a must. Ugh. As I said, all the attractive angles today, but this one is a pain to move down ever. So what I'll do with this is I'll just water it. It's got a semi-decent drip tray on the bottom of it, but I just want to make sure it doesn't spill out. So you saw what I did there, which is basically top water. However, I do like a little fusion of top water and bottom water, where what will happen now is I've left the water in the drip tray, and before I finish my watering, and usually what I'll do on the app is I won't tick this off as watered, so I know to keep checking back on it later. I'll then go back with the turkey baster again, and whatever's left in that water reservoir that hasn't been sucked up from the bottom up, I'll then kind of suck out basically. Now let's go for the rubri cinctum. Which is struggling the mostest at the moment because it is right up against like the roof, and it is really not liking, like, I mean, the roof glass is still kind of shaded, but it is really disliking the heat levels that it's getting up there. But I do not have, this is a very large plant, and I do not have anywhere to really put it. You can kind of see by the amount of crispiness that I'm getting on this. Is this drying out a bit too much? Possibly. I might need to adjust my watering schedule for this now that it's summer too. And you can see what I mean by that the leaves are all kind of facing away from that light, because that is sunburn basically there. And I'm okay with that. I don't have anywhere else to put this plant, unfortunately, at the moment. So it is just getting a bit of a harsh treatment, and I'll see how I get on with it basically, because these plants are a lovely idea, but when they start spreading that way, it tends to, in this space, I'm not a huge fan of wide plants. I like columnar plants because I can fit more in, basically. But yeah, wide plants are never it in here. But that is fully saturated. The soil levels may be a bit too high on this, but it's doing okay. I mean, it's still alive. Is it living its best life? No. But it's okay. It's doing okay. It's hardening off what it needs to be up there. Ironically enough, this doesn't have any, I say this, does it? No, it doesn't. It doesn't have any issues for right now. It might do. This is one that, and I can't remember, it was one of you lovely people basically that mentioned about spider mites on this, so this was a spider mite magnet. Thank you for the heads up. You are 100% correct. Spider mite magnet. I'm also looking this, whenever I move this, is the only time that I can actually have a look at my Hoya sunrise, which unfortunately all the roots rotted out at some point. And I've kind of like just basically dumped it into water with all of its leaves still on. I think some of it is coming back, which is quite cool. I might need to have a look at that now, actually, because if I don't do it now, it won't happen. You can see what I mean by it's looking a bit busted, but some of these leaves are feeling a bit more succulent. The amount of mealybugs on this is insane. Any rootage? No, how is this working? Oh, there's some roots at the very, very top there. Fine, in you go again. Let me put it some more water. It's not living its best life, but if I can get it to even slightly come back to life, I will be happy with it. If not, it's working a bit like a dried flower at the moment. I mean, the stems are all really, really, like, it's getting some water because none of the stems or the leaves have really kind of crisped up too much. Some of them have, but yeah, it's getting some moisture from somewhere. So we'll see. Oh, the level of mealybugs on this is, oh my God, it's flowering. Hysterical. There is a peduncle that has got blooms on it. How? You've not got any roots. How are you doing this? I don't understand. I'll probably leave this and kind of deal with this a bit more, because actually the tiniest bit of roots that it's got on there, I might deal with the mealybugs, so then at least it's not trying to fight those off as well. So yay, one more thing to do this morning. I'll do that off camera, don't worry. But I'll put back the rubrosynctum now. Yeah. So that is done. The state of this table right here is shocking at the moment. Right, the next one that does possibly need some watering, although I did water it during the week because I thought it was getting a bit too dry, is a propagation of the Philodendron pedatum, because that's another one that's gone, so I thought I'd get some progeny from it. And it's doing quite well, so I don't think this needs any more water for right now. What I'll do on my plant care app is I'll push back the next watering by a couple of days, so instead of saying it needs watering today, I'll kind of adjust it to say that it needs watering in 2 days, and I'll check then. Okay, and these two plants, usually I have them together, so I will water them around the same time as well. This is doing so well. This is not what's getting watering, but it's doing so well, and it's attaching, I think, finally to the moss pole. Which means I should start getting some leaves, and it does look like I might be getting some more leaves. So yes, way forward with the Obliqa Peru is give it a moss pole pretty urgently, basically. So let me put this down because this is not what's getting watered. The next two plants are the ones that are getting watered. So this is a Philodendron majestic, looking very, very dry at the moment, but it's doing okay. As I said, I purchased this from one of you lovely people who's based up in Scotland. Hi, if you see this. It's doing relatively well. It's slowly attaching to the moss pole, but I've never had the majestic, and I've always wanted to attempt growing it. So you might be able to see what I'm doing if I move it to that part of the camera. I'm just kind of doing my tilt and water technique with, not mine, but this is what I do and what I call it, because it will just flush down the back of that plastic. And then let it drip through. And at this point what I'll do is I'll let it finish dripping. And then I'll just put it in the cache pot, but I'm not going to put it back on the shelf just yet. And the next one that sits right next to it, which is why I usually deal with these two together, is the Philodendron glorious. Oh, it's doing so, so well. Any pests there? No, that's just dust. I'm trying to see. So what I always say, I try to do it if I can, remember, is when you water your plants and you've picked them up and you're looking at them, that's the time to check for pests. But it's been a full trifecta this summer, basically. I have found mealybugs as per usual. I have found spider mites. And I even found the dreaded thrips this year. Ironically enough, thrips don't bring me anywhere near as much dread as they used to. Finding more mealybugs does, but by this point you kind of probably can guess why. But you know what? It's fine. I found ways to deal with the thrips. They don't do that much damage when I've got this many plants. And usually I find with thrips, at least in this space, especially because I let it drop to a much cooler temperature in the winter, by the time that cooler temperature comes over, they all die off anyway. They do not like that temperature in here. So that's a double whammy. A, I save on a bit of energy. B, my kind of colder liking plants are happier. And C, whatever thrips. The only thing that seems to survive regardless of conditions is the mealybugs. But that's the time of the year where they'll all kind of die off anyway. So it's okay. And now, coming back to the other one that I just watered, I'll just make sure that I'm letting this drip. and then this will go on the shelf now. Yes, I know there's still going to be some water because that moss pole is going to drip a bit more, but I find that they seem to be doing okay at that point. Also, the cache pot or the decorative pot, it still has a bit of space at the bottom, so even if it drips in, it's not always in contact with the growing media. Let me just double check whilst I say this. Yeah, there's hardly anything that's dropped now, so let me put this back. Now, this plant isn't on the list, however, but I can see that it's like struggling a bit in the heat. So what I might do is just water this and kind of update it on my app, because this is in a semihydro and it is looking very dry. It is a Monstera, so this is the Monstera Peanutty Partita, but it's this time of the year, it kind of tends to be if you see a plant in need of kind of watering, pick it up, see if it does actually need watering, and if it does, water it and just update the app and adjust the app potentially. So if this was getting checked every 7 days before, this might need to get checked every 6 days, every 5 days now, and go from there. Because essentially this is the time of the year where a lot of plants get a lot of heat stress in my space. So yeah, that is now fine. And I'll update it, but it's doing quite well. It's very, very happy, and it has definitely attached to the moss pole. Don't know whether or not this is going to come up in the camera, but possibly you might be able to see the lines that are happening there. Right, let's check on the UPI, shall we? And after that, I might have to end the video here. I know that I promised that I was going to move the moss pole around for the El Choco Red, but not only is the camera looking like it's about to like melt from the heat, but I'm also running out of space on the camera, so I don't want it to cut out. So this is a relatively long video already. I mean, obviously this is going to change in editing, but I'm looking at it and it's over an hour long. So I'm hoping that you enjoy. My editing self probably won't, but hopefully you enjoy. And as I said earlier on, this is the time where I've let it bottom water for a tiny bit. It hasn't actually sucked up that much water, so what I might do at this case is empty this out from the water reservoir at the bottom, or the drip tray technically, because this is not in semihydro, this is in soil, and re-water it from the top just to make sure that it gets a tiny bit more moisture, purely because it is very, very warm at the moment and very, very sunny a lot of the time. So I want to give this its best chance. Although I will say the UPI for me so far has been a relatively robust plant. It doesn't tend to give me an awful lot of grief. And it seems to do okay in my space, even in the high highlight conditions that it's at. So if you're thinking about finding it, I know they're not to everybody's kind of liking, and I know that they're not always the easiest things to find, but actually in my limited experience that I've had with just the one plant in my space, this has been a super, super rewarding plant to grow. I've also just noticed that my Philodendron gigas is looking a bit wilty, so that probably needs a water as well. Love summer. All gets a bit much. Right, and I think I'll wrap it up there before camera overheats or battery dies or storage runs out. That was a lot, basically. But yeah, this was a kind of a bit of a sneak peek, really. I've probably still got another hour to go in here, I would say minimum, and this is an easy Sunday for me. But yeah, what did you think? Do you do things differently? Does some of this surprise you? Did you have me in the background where we're kind of doing our plant tour together, which is kind of cool? But yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you here soon, and I truly, truly hope that you have a great rest of the day. Thanks. Bye.